we're saying much more. Actually, you've been saying much more for many years. So what I want to emphasize now is not just the conceptual aspect, these ideas, but the fact that they can be tested. Because sometimes some people don't care so much about the concept and keep on doing their own research, and sometimes people who care about those ideas seem to behave as if they weren't irrelevant experimentally. But you've been attempting to breach those and going beyond. So perhaps you could talk a bit about now morphic resonance and the idea that it's not just that memories may not be stored in the brain, but also that what we learn can be transferred in a non-local way to other brains of other fellow human beings or even across species. And furthermore, to the whole of nature. Actually, that's the thesis of your 1981 book, New Signs of Life. So it goes beyond brains in two senses.
Well, this is my own particular hypothesis, a very general hypothesis, that all of nature is essentially habitual, that the so-called laws of nature are like habits, that each species has a kind of collective memory. And how this works is through a kind of resonance between wave patterns. Everything in nature is made of wave patterns. Atoms are wave patterns. Molecules are wave patterns. The living organisms are full of wave patterns. We have brain wave patterns, we have heartbeats, we have breathing rates, we have wave patterns in ourselves, repetitive oscillations and very rapid wave activities at all levels of nature. And of course, this even works through galaxies. Even galaxies have great waves of electricity and cloud and like waves, actual vibratory waves going through them. So everything's vibratory in nature. And if wave patterns can influence subsequent similar wave patterns across space and time, which is what I think morphic resonance is, morphic being the word for form in Greek. So it's to do with the form or pattern of the waves. If they can act across time, then this would explain the memory. And with any given species, say an antelope, a baby antelope, being an antelope, would tune into the memories of previous antelopes and would have a collective memory of their instincts and would know how to behave automatically. A baby spider would know from tuning into the memory of web spinning behavior in previous spiders how to spin a web. I don't think all this is programmed in the DNA. DNA codes for proteins. So I think that within modern biology there's been a distortion of understanding by assuming that all heredity is crammed into the DNA, somehow programmed in a way that's never been explained, and all memories are crammed into the brain and somehow immaterially embodied there. I don't think either of those things are true, and I think that the resonant patterns that are now known to occur in brains and associated with learning and memory may well be part of this morphic resonance process. A similar pattern is set up as a resonance from the past. And the reason we remember our own memories is that we're most similar to ourselves in the past. Similarity is the key. Then you think, well, okay, well, what about people who are really, really similar but different, identical twins? Then there's lots of evidence they pick up from each other. Even separated at birth, they show many similarities. I don't think that's because it's all in the genes. I think it's because they're particularly resonant. And then collective memory, which the psychologist Jung talked about, is, I think, the way we tune up into lots of other people. We're similar to lots and lots of other people, more similar to some than others, and so we'd have more emphasis from our own family and our own immediate relatives and ancestors than from remote people in other parts of the world. So I think that the morphic resonance approach to memory explains the failure to find memory traces, and also makes the recent research showing things like representational drift and wave patterns as the key make much more sense. So it's not about engrams stored in the brain, it's about a resonance across time. And for somebody who thinks that there is no memory in nature, then this is literally unthinkable, but why should someone think there's no memory in nature? Most people who think there's no memory in nature believe that nature is governed by the laws of nature. And what are the laws of nature? No one's ever seen a law of nature. No one's ever crystallized one. They're supposed to be everywhere, and yet nowhere in particular. The laws that govern the falling of an object. If I dropped something, it fell. The laws of gravitation are supposed to be working right here. But so the laws of electromagnetism and quantum theory and thermodynamics and stuff. They're everywhere. Well, if people say, well, how can memory be everywhere, potentially present everywhere, which is what I'm suggesting. If it works across time and you tune into it, it means the whole of the past is potentially present everywhere.
Yes.
How can it be everywhere? That's unthinkable. It's invisible and yet it's everywhere. Well, people who say that have taken for granted most of their lives that the laws of nature are everywhere and invisible, without, for a moment, questioning how could such a thing be possible. How could the law of nature, represented in a physics textbook as an equation, be present everywhere invisibly? So it's not as if morphic resonance is utterly mysterious compared with plain common sense. We have a choice between two mysteries, an amnesic universe governed by omnipresent laws of nature which no one's ever seen, or the idea of memory and habits in nature which fits the facts much better, especially in an evolutionary universe.
Yes, how beautiful we can go from asking this rather big question about where memories are in the brain to the whole of biology and even cosmology, and realize that we've inherited certain presuppositions as to the laws of the universe and how to even conceive it, and we don't question those. They make sense, but then when we ask similar questions in changing a little bit the subject, now it's not the laws of nature now but memories, then that seems unthinkable. So in a way what we're discussing goes beyond neuroscience and the sciences in general. It's about an understanding, a view of the world, and it's a quite beautiful and powerful and deep view of the world.